Alright, so this is going to be a quick video. I was asked to do a simplified procedure for alignments, specifically on 5-tube superheads. So I'm going to use this about 1940-41 Emerson AA5 here. I've had this radio for about 10 years. I recapped it. It's been sitting in storage. I never was able to ever get it aligned right back then. I didn't have the right tools. So today we're going to go through and align this properly. Now, the big thing with an alignment is stability on both the receiver end and the generator end. So to solve that problem, I'm going to use this tiny SA here. This has a built-in signal generator. Super accurate for at least for what we're doing. And this radio here, if you can see, the pilot lamp's on, and it has been powered up for the last 45 minutes or so. And it's all ready to be aligned. I got it tuned into the local station. Doesn't get all that loud. This is my strongest local station. That's full volume. So we know this is good. This has been recapped. All the tubes in this are either new or test really good. So an alignment is the absolute last step. Now with both, if you're using a tube generator, an old one, you need to let that warm up as well for at least an hour. They drift like crazy when you don't. If you are going to use one of those generators, you also should probably use some sort of frequency counter or oscilloscope to determine the actual frequency that you're trying to align with. The big thing for accuracy here, the IF is most important. If you don't get the IF right, the radio will never track properly. So this radio does not have any service information. It's a weird model, a CW334. I was not able to find a service sheet specifically for this chassis. However, ones of the same year range, very similar radios. They're also all about 455 kilohertz, so I know this is 455 in the IF. But with pre-war stuff specifically, you have to watch out. Not everything is 455. They can be 465, 462, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different ones. They could be 262, and I've seen 136 and the really early stuff, so you just have to pay attention and know what you're dealing with. Normally it's well marked. So to start with our alignment here, what I'm going to do is I have the radio, of course, powered up. It's warmed up. It's stabilized. I'm going to turn my generator on here. And we will get this set up. And we're going to do 455 kilohertz. Our modulation, we're going to want, you can put whatever you want, whatever frequency you feel like, you like to listen to. Personally, I find 400 hertz not terrible, so we'll use that. We'll do AM modulation here. And now the generator is still off. It's just set up, ready to go here. And what I'm going to do, notice this is plugged into an isolation transformer. If you're doing this with a hot chassis radio or an AA5, you really need one of these. You can zap yourself or you can ruin your generator. So I'm going to hook this up one side to ground to the chassis. And the other side I'm going to go through a 0.047 microfarad capacitor. And we're going to go right to the antenna tuner section of our tuning capacitor, which, if you don't know which one that is, it's the larger of the two sections on a super heterodyne, or at least without an RF stage. We're going to connect that there. So now we have our signal being coupled in right to the grid of our 12SA7. Now, if you don't have procedures like I don't, I normally like to turn these all the way to the bottom end of the band with the tuning capacitor plates fully meshed. That's just how I do it. Sometimes I see procedures that want it all the way open. I don't really think it makes a huge difference as long as you're injecting the signal into the right place here on the grid of your converter tube. So, you can hear we don't have anything coming out of the speaker. I turned the volume up a little bit here. We're going to turn our generator on. Can't really hear it. Sweep. Got it turned all the way up here. Oh, there we go. Tuning capacitor was had some junk in it. So we can hear we're overdriving it pretty hard. Now you want to turn down the level out of your generator until it's just barely audible on the radio. So that's still pretty loud. Still kind of loud at minus 47 dBm. 57. That's with the volume control up. You can just barely hear it. Now that's ideal. Then what you need is an alignment tool. I'm not going to say you can use a screwdriver for this. You shouldn't. But this is the correct tool. And I'm just going to work my way from the rearmost transformer to the frontmost. So I'm going to start with this screw here. You can hear the peak. That one's peaked. That one's peaked. It's a lot louder now. Now, since the signal's a lot louder, it's going to start triggering our AGC in here, or AVC. I'm going to turn it down. Oh. Now you can hear it. It's weak once again. And I'm going to start here on our first transformer now. If I can get the tool lined up. That's a lot stronger there. Double check our peak. Okay, that sounds good. And we'll move over to this one. Try to get my alignment tool in there. I think that one was right on still. So out of these 4 adjustments, this one, and this one all needed to be changed. But now you can hear we've got a really strong signal coming through at minus 62 dBm. So this is a hell of a lot more sensitive, at least at 455 kilohertz. So at this point now, we can take our generator off. Oh, listen to that. That sounds a lot better. We got static now. So now that our IF is aligned, now we have to do the front end alignment. And the way you want to do this without influencing your converter tube, which will then influence your oscillator and just essentially change everything if you try to couple into the grid to align the front end on this radio. So what you want to do is you can either connect ground to the chassis and kind of drape one of these leads in front of the antenna. That sometimes works. So what I like to do, and this is an easy thing to make, here's Senior Loop, and it's just a box. Anything will work. You know, it's not super critical, with a coil of wire around it. And what I do with this is I connect it to my generator. And then this essentially radiates the signal to the radio. So what we'll do is we'll go in here. And now we want to align our radio, our radio dial. And the way I like to do that is pick one of the higher numbers on the dial, you know, 1400, 1500, somewhere around there, somewhere with a defined point on the dial. And you want to line the radio up right there at that point. I'm going to pick 1400. So we'll turn our output off. We'll set it to 1400 kilohertz. And now we still have it turned all the way down. We're still at 400 kilohertz modulation. We'll turn that on. We'll see if we can find it. Can't find it yet, but let's turn the power up. There it is. It's off frequency, so I'm going to set my dial pointer right to 1400. You can kind of hear it. Now, to adjust the tracking and the dial of your radio, you're going to want to adjust the oscillator, which is the smaller section of the tuning capacitor. And you'll want to adjust this for a peak. while also simultaneously turning down your generator to be just barely audible, like that. And we'll keep adjusting this until we find our peak. Woo, that's strong. Keep turning it down here. There it is, minus 51 dBm. That sounds pretty good. Got a lot of static coming through now. That's it right there. And then we're going to adjust our antenna trimmer here for maximum output. Which happens to be right there. That's a lot more sensitive. You can still hear it at minus 61 dBm. Just barely in the background. But now at this point, your radio should be aligned. We'll do a quick performance test here. You can hear there's a lot more static. And it works a lot better. I can almost blow the speaker out now. Then what we want to do is check the low end of the dial. You can hear I got a problem with the tuning capacitor here right at the bottom. We're just going to ignore that. But you can hear the static is just as strong at the bottom end of the dial as it is at the top end, and that's how it should be. If you do not have that, you will have to adjust your antenna. We can either take off windings and try to get that set to where it's going to match your oscillator tracking. But rarely do you need to do that. Sometimes they give you what's called a patter adjustment, which is another small trimmer capacitor, and it's in series with the coil, and that's to essentially set your tracking. But again, you need to refer to the documentation for which radio specifically you're trying to align. If you can't get documentation, it's going to take a little bit of thought process to figure it out. But generally, all of these are going to operate the same way, and they're fairly easy to align. So hopefully this helped out some of you guys. It gives you a better idea of what you're doing. And simplified way, you don't really need to know too much about what you're doing, and there's not really that many important steps. But really the biggest things are letting things warm up and stabilize, as well as having an accurate generator that doesn't drift, specifically for your IF. As you can hear, it makes a huge difference.